Hey guys, Drifter here. Before we get started with the main video today, I wanted to ask you for a favor. If you've ever had a bad experience with your health insurance company, please leave a comment below and tell me all about it. If you've been denied care that would have relieved your pain, cured a disability, or if you have had the unfortunate situation of a loved one being denied care and then them passing, please leave a comment down there below. And I'm doing this because I feel like if anybody disagrees with the message of this video, they're only going to need to take a little glance at that comment section to see just how evil insurance companies are. And I think the degree to which insurance companies are evil best explains why so many people have sympathy for the UnitedHealthcare shooter Luigi Mangione. He killed Brian Thompson, who was the CEO of UnitedHealthcare at the time, and seems to have done so specifically to punish them for not covering other people. And what's wild about this is I strongly sympathize with Luigi on this one myself. And if I were a member of the jury for his trial, I would absolutely advocate for jury nullification so that he could walk free. And I don't say this lightly, and I don't say it to condone murder, but what else is society supposed to do when they're faced with an evil organization that has more resources than most countries, and they make their money by murdering Americans? So I guess my first stop today is to prove why United Health and most health insurance in general is evil. Then I'm going to talk about the psychology of that evil, then about the alleged shooter, and then I'm going to tie it into a very grim personal story of mine. And I would like to again reiterate that I do not condone or endorse violence or murder. But by that same token, I do not feel even the slightest shred of empathy or remorse for when bad things happen to some of the most evil people on the planet. So let's talk about UnitedHealthcare and why it's evil or why it's different than any other health insurance company. UnitedHealthcare, in case you didn't know, is a massive corporation. It has about a $500 billion net worth, and it's considered the 16th most valuable corporation on the planet. If you look up lists of most valuable companies, you'll find this one in the same ballpark as Apple, as Amazon, as Ford Motor Company, as any of the huge companies that you can imagine. It earns about $85 billion a year of gross profit off of about 52 million Americans that signed up, so it profits about $1,600 per person. But what's different about UnitedHealthcare is that its denial rates are 3 times higher than the industry average. I've got this chart that shows what percentage of claims are denied by various insurers in America, and you can see that Kaiser is down there at the bottom with 6%. The industry average is 16%, so something like Superior Health or maybe kind of close to Anthem. But then Blue Cross is really high, Aetna's really high, Medica, Molina. But United Healthcare stands alone such that they gave its bar its own color so that it stands out because it's so much higher than anybody else in the industry. And it is almost exactly double the industry average rate of denials. And this isn't something that was done on accident. This was deliberately planned to deny more care to make more money. And the rate of denials has gone up from, I think it was something like 7% in 1990 all the way up to 33% now, which is outrageous. And you got to keep in mind that some amount of these people that are denied care are just going to straight up die. They're just toast. And I would consider that murder, but we're going to get to the details of that in a little bit. Another thing that UnitedHealthcare has done and has been doing for a long time is using artificial intelligence to deny people's healthcare claims. They literally rolled out an AI platform that allegedly had a 90% error rate. And I'm not saying that's a 90% denied claims rate. I'm saying it made just erroneous decisions, either approving or denying about 90% of the time. And I guarantee you it was heavily weighted on denying people coverage. They did it with machine learning algorithms. They had doctors sign off on batches of 50 or sometimes even hundreds of different claims, reviewing each one for less than a second. And again, every time one of these claims is denied, somebody dies. And I've been on the internet for a while now, so I've seen a lot of different attempts to calculate how many people UnitedHealthcare killed in their quest for profit, and more specifically to calculate how many unnecessary deaths the CEO that got murdered oversaw. All of these figures are armchair math based on how many people are denied claim, what percentage of them can reasonably be expected to die, how many of them are UnitedHealthcare customers. But the most reasonable estimates I see are numbers between 1 million and 8 million Americans dead over about the last decade or so from being denied healthcare just from UnitedHealthcare, to say nothing of all of the other companies. And to put that in perspective, 400,000 Americans died in combat in World War II, and about 6 million Jews were exterminated during the Holocaust. That means that the CEO of UnitedHealthcare that got murdered oversaw unnecessary deaths to the tune of the actual Holocaust from World War II, except instead of dead German Jews, that's dead Americans that died because they could not get their insurance covered. Both of these numbers, both the veteran deaths in World War II and the Holocaust numbers, are actually lower than the upper end of the estimates that UnitedHealthcare has killed. And if you want to throw in all of the other companies, it's like a drop in the bucket. You could have like 10 9/11s every day and not catch up to these healthcare companies. UnitedHealthcare has killed more Americans than George W. Bush killed Iraqis and Afghanis combined, ×2. And I think this is cursed. I think this is wrong, because if you are paying for health insurance as a customer, the company that you're giving the money for has exactly one job. The only thing that you care about out of all the stuff that they do is that they pay for your medical care if something bad happens. Something bad happens, surely my insurance company will have my back, right? But that's literally never how it works. Something bad will happen, you'll go to the hospital, you'll be denied care, you'll be told they're not going to cover it, you'll get buried in a mountain of paperwork, and you will have to fight tooth and nail to get anything covered, anything whatsoever. So many people get denied healthcare for largely arbitrary reasons, and a great number of them die from lack of treatment. Because of this bizarre system that we have, you can't just pay for healthcare in cash. Some places won't take it, some places don't want it, and if they do, they're going to charge you a 1,000% markup. Band-Aids that you got in the hospital that cost the hospital about 10 cents are going to cost about $20 on the low end. It's outrageous. Basically, any service that you get in a hospital is going to be marked up to be thousands of percent more profitable than it needs to be, and insurance companies will never pay this. They will always negotiate for a much, much, much lower fee. But if you as a person without an insurance company get stuck with, I don't know, even a minor injury, you could go home with millions of dollars of bills for just like a broken leg or something. Did you know that the most common reason for bankruptcy in the United States of America is people that are unable to afford their health care? It's not people buying too many iPhones. It's not people financing big TVs or getting 4 cars and an RV to go down to the lake or even getting an unfavorable mortgage. Over half of bankruptcies in the United States are just people getting sick and can't afford it, and the majority of those people are actively paying for insurance. They have insurance when this process starts, just the insurance doesn't cover it and they go bankrupt trying to deal with it in cash. Most Americans just get their insurance through their employer, and huge companies like UnitedHealthcare primarily advertise their products to employers instead of directly to the customers they're serving, because they believe they can pass on lower costs to your boss. Your boss wants to pay less for healthcare, they'll go with UnitedHealthcare, not caring at all about the quality. And a lot of people don't have a choice, because if you don't take the PPO healthcare that you get at work, you could be paying 5 or up to 10 times more for private insurance like I do. I pay $1,400 a month for insurance that covers almost nothing that I absolutely despise, and we're going to get into that. But most people can't afford that. Most people have to work a job. They have to take the insurance at the job. They can barely afford that, and then that insurance company doesn't pay for anything. Which leads me to what I would call the banality of corporate evil. The more claims you deny, the more profitable the company is, and the more money the shareholders get. Maximizing that profit is the only motivation that any large corporation has, and corporations are ultimately composed of people, and this is where it gets interesting. An individual person probably wouldn't murder another person for money. Almost everybody would say that's wrong, unethical, immoral, or sinful, certainly illegal. But something really strange happens to human psychology when we start functioning as an organization. The more people you get involved with something, the less guilt there is about what the organization does. Legally speaking, there's also considerably less blame for what the organization does, or liability. In the legal sense, it's almost always the corporation that committed the crime and not the people within it, which means that if the corporation does something horrifyingly illegal, the individuals that made those decisions will in most cases be absolved of criminal or even civil punishment, and only the corporation will face a financial penalty. There's also degrees of separation between the executive making the decision to increase the denial rates and the patients that die. The executives that made these decisions, knowing that more patients would die, they didn't have to go strangle patients to death themselves to make more money. They didn't even have to do rounds at the hospital. They didn't even have to look at the results of their actions. Honestly, a lot of CEOs, they probably don't even need to look at the results of the rates that people died. The only thing they're looking at is if the money went up or down. So delegating death through authority or delegating death through an organization is psychologically proven to greatly decrease the amount of empathy that an individual feels for those that are harmed by their actions. So at the end of the day, you have this perfect storm that allows corporations like UnitedHealth to increase their profit margins by increasing denial rates, while knowing those denial rates lead to massive amounts of unnecessary deaths. The company and the people that made those decisions will not face any legal repercussions for this, as it was just an action of a corporation. And since insurance companies, while regulated, are largely legally allowed to have high denial rates and do interesting things with their contracts if they want to, even the corporation may not even be liable. And the individuals making these decisions are psychologically insulated from feeling any sort of regret about them because they never actually have to come face to face with those decisions. So because of all the things I've mentioned before, UnitedHealth and most other large insurance companies can just make the decision to murder you or your family for money. They can just decide that you're not profitable and you deserve to die instead of them fulfilling their obligations. And the only balance that there is in this system is they have to decide how many murders society will tolerate for their profit. I do genuinely believe that if an executive of a corporation makes a decision to allow mass harm or death to come to people in order to profit, that's evil. That's the definition of evil. You're trading your benefit for other people's suffering. And I'm not talking about the reality of mass-produced products or large corporations. You know, if you've got, we'll pick on Tesla. Tesla's got this massive factory cranking out millions of cars. Some of them are going to crash. Some people are going to get hurt in the factory. Some things are going to happen. When you move millions of dollars around and change policies, there's always losers in those kind of scenarios. And I get that. But what I'm talking about isn't the nature of managing a large organization and minimizing harm. What I'm talking about is the callous calculation of deliberately increasing your corporation's kill rate because somehow that increases profitability. It's really like the only business where that works. Any other corporation, the more customers that die, the worse. And insurance, sometimes the better. Depends on the customer, depends how profitable or how expensive their disease is. And if you know that killing more of your customers means you make more money and do that anyway, you are evil. It's literally the definition of evil to me. And it's not small or ignorable or banal as it would often be described. It is an enormous malevolence that spreads suffering at a scale that our monkey brains are literally not able to comprehend all over the nation and to some degree all over the world. The CEO that was assassinated, I feel absolutely no sympathy for him, nor even for his family because they all benefited from that blood money. The CEO that was assassinated knew about these policies. He knew about the error rates in the AI. He knew about the denial rates, and he continued working at the company. I think continuing to stay part of an evil organization is evil, but beyond that, he advocated for expanding them to increase profits even more, to deny even more, to use more AI, more machine learning, less oversight into the whole thing, knowing that thousands, millions of people would die because of those decisions, but it doesn't matter as long as those shareholders are happy, right? I think that is a profound evil, and it is unfortunate that it's so incredibly common in our business world. It's not just insurance companies that makes these decisions. Almost any company that makes a dangerous product is faced with a decision like this, and far too few make the ethical or even reasonable one to save lives. I'll give you a super brief example from something that I did. I got a master's in business administration, had a consulting project I worked with in college, and somebody had invented a device that I'm not going to name that was very dangerous. It had a very high kill rate. Well, my group's advice was you can't release this. The professor had a different idea and shifted the project to just release this in countries that don't have regulations. Just picked out some like African countries and some Asian countries that didn't really have regulations and made us rework the project to advise the guy that had the product with the really high kill rate to just sell it to poor people. Just like if they die over there, whatever, there's no liabilities and you're still profitable and it's all totally fine. And this was the nicest, sweetest professor. This guy was deeply religious, went to church every Sunday, forgiveness, love, and peace, and all that kind of stuff, and felt nothing, not a shred of empathy about the undoubtedly thousands of foreign poor people that died because he wanted our group to advise the guy to sell the product with a high kill rate somewhere where there would be no consequences. And that's like that everywhere in business, and it's very, very scary. Moving along to our last section today, I want to warn you, this is going to get extremely dark. This is going to be very grim. This is going to be a much meaner drifter than you're used to. We're going to be going off the rails here, okay? Where I talk about my personal feelings on this matter. And I do feel personally attached to it because the shooter, Luigi, suffered pain from a spinal column disorder called spondylolisthesis. It's where your spine either breaks or slips without breaking. It pinches nerves, causes paralysis, lack of bladder control, and stuff like that. It's a relatively common disorder and common injury, but it's extraordinarily painful. If anybody's had this, you know. And I know because I also have this disorder. It's why I've been stuck in the bed for 3 years. The pain from it is severe enough to force hard biological changes in your brain that you cannot reverse. Science says it can age your brain. It can lead to rage issues, to emotional inhibition issues. It can limit sleep. It can cause erectile dysfunction, give you brain fog, anxiety, depression. It can mess with your ability to digest food. Your autonomic nervous system can go crazy. There's a lot of really bad things that can happen. And I'm telling you, spinal pain is very extreme. It truly is the weeping and gnashing of teeth that is described in the Bible. And I've suffered with this pain for several years now. So when I saw that the shooter, Luigi, was suffering from the same type of pain, I felt deep empathy because, again, I too struggled to get proper health care for my spine. As many of you on the channel know, I had other issues going on, but I had to constantly fight not only doctors' lazy opinions, but also the opinions of insurance companies, what tests they would cover, what they wouldn't cover. I got too many tests. I didn't get enough tests. I didn't get the right test. The paperwork was wrong. We're going to bill you anyway. Thousands of pages of paperwork that I completely lost track of, battling to try to get things covered. While at my lowest, while suffering in a way that you couldn't believe, the insurance companies forced me to be precision accurate, diligent about my paperwork, constantly file claims, have medical professionals call and argue on my behalf, pay for things out of pocket. I had to fight tooth and nail to get anything covered, and I still had to spend over $100,000 of my own personal cash on medical treatment just so that I didn't have to wait any longer. And that's important because while I figured out what was wrong and I got some treatment and I'm doing better now, the amount of time that I spent in extreme pain was greatly exacerbated by the deliberate barriers that insurance companies put in my way to prevent me from making claims and spending too much of their money. I got to spend, if I just have to estimate, probably about an extra year and a half, maybe 2 years of suffering, of outrageous suffering, because these companies didn't want to approve tests, didn't want to approve treatments. There's a wait for this, authorize for that, and this is out of network, and just all the hoops you jump through. And you might be asking, Drifter, why do you care? What kind of suffering? Clearly, you're looking pretty good. It can't be that bad. I'm talking about the kind of suffering where I used to lay in bed at night, crying and praying to God to just let me die. I'd given up on praying and begging to be well. I just wanted to die. God, just let me die. At least the suffering will end. It's the kind of suffering where the only way I could sleep some nights was to imagine what it would be like to be dead and feel nothing. And that deep meditation of trying to not even exist would sometimes relax my brain enough to where I was able to sleep. I can tell you from experience, this type of pain changes people. I began to feel bad, wrong, a darkness, a corruption in my soul that I'd never felt before. In these times of pain and suffering, I began to fantasize about my death, and somewhere along the way, I wanted a Night City exit. I decided to have a more fun death. I didn't want to lie in bed and die of old age or just wither away from some horrible disease. It seemed like a much more fun way to die, and maybe one that could inspire some positive change in the world. And I began to imagine a long-lasting revenge against those that I deemed responsible for my pain, which would be insurance companies. Also thought about shooting up a Klan rally. That seems like it'd be pretty fun too. They'd love that. They got all their guns. They've just been looking for an excuse to shoot people like me. I think it's a win-win. But anyway, I began to fantasize about getting revenge against my insurance company because they were dictating that I suffer like I'm telling you no human being should ever have to suffer. I fantasized about killing every single executive in my insurance company, or at least, if I was feeling generous that day, maybe walking around and just shooting them right in the kneecap with a shotgun to blow one of their legs off and telling them I hope they have good health insurance. Because if they have it through their company, they most certainly want. I never had a desire to hurt janitors, security, or just like regular people that work the building. But my God, did I ever fantasize over and over and over again about watching the executive level employees that denied me care suffer a completely excruciating experience. And I knew that this was wrong, right? But I wondered during these dark times in my life if the people that saw this on the news would view my final act as monstrous or perhaps heroic. Some twisted, sick part of me hoped that it was possible that I could be remembered as a folk hero who fought back against the evil and corrupt insurance companies. So it was very validating to see that's exactly how most people responded to Luigi after he assassinated the CEO of UnitedHealthcare. It made me feel validated that I wasn't the only person that had these kind of feelings about the American healthcare system. But it's also very scary to think about how many people are just as angry as I am and just as crazy as I am, and one bad day away from going totally cuckoo crazy. I'm grateful now that I've got the treatment. The pain is drastically reduced and my brain isn't going to such dark places. But I'll tell you, when you're lying in extreme pain where you can't eat, you can't sleep, and you just feel like you're getting stabbed and set on fire and gutted 24/7, 10 out of 10 pain that never ends, that'll make you crazy. The thoughts that come from extreme places of suffering like that will make you into a person that you never imagined that you could be until you find yourself in that situation. And I know that those feelings that I had, those desires that I had were wrong, illegal, immoral, unethical, sinful, but that didn't stop me from feeling them. And I want to reiterate again, I'm not advocating for the murder of CEOs. I'm not advocating for harm to anybody. I don't really believe in violence as a problem solver, but I still felt those feelings. I couldn't unfeel the hatred in my heart to weigh the degree of suffering I was experiencing from the degree of indifference that my insurance company had about maintaining their profit margin. And there was no way out of the system. I couldn't even cash pay my way out of the system. Some places wouldn't even take you if you do cash pay. It drives me crazy. And beyond this, I don't think that changing the CEO of an evil corporation will make CEOs more scared or change or really meaningfully compete with the financial motivations that led to this kind of situation to begin with. So while I don't advocate for violence, I do advocate for change. I advocate for reform. I advocate for massive amounts of regulation on the insurance agency. Maybe we can get a single-payer government healthcare system that'll take care of a lot of people here. Maybe by some bizarre way, deregulating the industry somehow helps it and allows people to shop plans more effectively. Maybe the industry needs caps on how often they can deny or what they can deny or how, I don't know. I'm not a health insurance expert. I'm not a public policy genius that knows the way out here, but I know that something is wrong because the American government, just our government, spends more money on healthcare than any other nation on the planet. That healthcare that the government provides about 1/3 of the healthcare in the nation, and it gets worse outcomes than any other socialized system on the planet. And then the rest of us, 2/3, are stuck paying out through the nose tens of thousands of dollars per year just to have health insurance. And that's brutal, and it doesn't even cover anything. So we're spending more money than anybody on the planet and getting some of the worst results. I'm not smart enough to tell you how to overhaul the entire healthcare industry and health insurance industry, but I can tell you that when the vast majority of people across almost all ideologies are cheering for a brutal murderer because the victim was a healthcare CEO, that might be an indication that there's a problem with the industry that might need some change. So guys, that's all for this video. I know it was very dark. I know it was very grim. I've been trying not to talk about this subject and just focus on gaming, but I just couldn't help myself. This is just really what was on my heart today. Kind of wanted to get it out there, and I want to hear your stories. I'm going to read all the comments below. Please let me know if you had a bad experience with your insurance company, and if so, what it was all about. Guys, that's all for this video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.